It's been a recent track record over the last several years that Marvel films aren't that great. This noticeable dip in quality might have been present before the pandemic, but it's truly been prevalent within their output post-pandemic overall. Their stories are lacking in depth or any semblance of nuance, the characters feel thin, and overall the strings holding these movies and shows together feel stretched incredibly thin, with noticeable fraying occurring along these said strings. In my review for their previous film Captain America Brave New World back in February, I had made a comment that Marvel was pretty much done for unless their two upcoming films, Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four this year, were good. These two films showcased a lot of promise and are both attempting to set something complex and grandiose up within this extended universe. Now this is a difficult task to accomplish, and as a result it's a lot to handle for only two films. There's a lot of pressure to succeed in this task, not just with critics like myself yearning for something substantial or solid, but for die-hard fans of this property who are looking forward toward the next few years of Marvel's future and hoping for something complex and narratively astounding to set the stage for what's to come. Marvel is setting up some truly staggering events and characters to occur within the next several years, and it is truly up to these two films to truly deliver what fans expect going forward through this new saga of the universe. And now Thunderbolts is arriving in theaters this weekend, one of the two aforementioned films that is attempting to set up something new and grandiose with its execution. Now going into Thunderbolts, I was hesitant, but also I found myself facing a type of feeling that I usually have not felt going into many films before, which was, please let this film be good. I so desperately wanted this film to succeed, not just from a critical lens, but from a fan lens as well. It might shock some of you to know that before I reviewed films for a career, I was a huge Marvel fan. One of my best friends in grade school got me into the MCU, and I remember going to the theaters every single opening weekend without fail, eagerly anticipating the next installment of what was a captivating and enthralling universe at the time. That's why it has hurt so much to see Marvel's quality the last few years dip, as I'm not just analyzing these films from a craft and technical standpoint, also from the standpoint of someone who grew up with these characters in this universe as well. For this reason, I was really rooting for Thunderbolts to succeed in any regard, or to at least show some sort of promise towards the future of Marvel in relation to what it tries to accomplish. And I left the theater feeling somewhat conflicted. You see, Thunderbolts isn't a bad movie, but it's also not great. It's not exactly a step forward in the right direction for Marvel overall, but it is at least a futile attempt at a crawl forward. What Thunderbolts accomplishes in the runtime isn't sure to win over any new fans or detractors from Marvel over the years, and there's a lot here that it doesn't achieve or live up to, but I can't say that this film is genuinely terrible, which is a relief. Of course, this relief isn't necessarily great, as the film still isn't that good, but compared to the output of Marvel's recent films, it's a quality that I'll take at face value for what it is. Thunderbolts follows a ragtag crew of superheroes and mercenaries led by Yelena, played by Florence Pugh, who all have to come together and put aside their differences when a new threat arrives, promising destruction and chaos in its wake. Florence Pugh's commanding performance as Yelena truly anchors the film overall and holds it together. Without this central anchor point, events and ideas here would fall apart faster than they do in the end result, and it is not an easy feat to carry the entire film on your back. Of course, Pugh has help from Sebastian Stan in a return to form as Bucky, who is a fan favorite character and still plays his role with a commanding charm and charisma. David Harbour wasn't my favorite part of Black Widow back in 2021, but his character here comes across as slightly less grating overall than he was in that film, which is commendable. And I was a huge fan of what they did with Hannah John Kamen's Ghost character in 2016's Ant-Man and the Wasp, so to see her back here in full form in such a commanding role is awesome and really fun. And Wyatt Russell also delivers solid work as John Walker, who must rise to the occasion to determine what being a hero really means deep down. And this last point overall describes what Thunderbolts is trying to achieve as a film. None of these characters are perfect in any sense of the word, and this is something the movie goes to great lengths to convey. These mercenaries are looked down upon and downtrodden, and they don't feel any semblance of worth in relation to what they do with their respective talents. However, the film explores how by coming together, these loners begin to form a facsimile of a family and recognize their worth and meaning in the process. And the way this film explores this angle and message is really great and makes the film soar in key moments throughout. However, the same cannot be said for the rest of the thematic angles the film attempts to explore in its runtime. Now, Lewis Pullman plays Bob, a mild-mannered man who harbors dark secrets of his own. You see, he is also a superpowered being, but cannot control his actions as he also struggles with serious mental health issues and anger issues, and lashes out in moments where he cannot control. And this begins a long and involved exploration into mental health that the film attempts to explore with some semblance of seriousness, but ultimately falls flat in every regard. You see, it's almost as if the Marvel writers are checking every box in relation to past mental health portrayals in the media, then they are doing their own thing with this angle here. Nothing about the characterization of Bob and his mental health issues feels nuanced or insightful in this regard, and it really serves no other plot purpose than as a weak plot device overall that is used to set up a sappy and emotionally flat final act sequence that feels shoehorned in and quite derivative from any other films of its caliber. This isn't a portrayal of mental health that feels like, hey, we're raising an important topic that needs more exploration in our modern day society and culture through a genre-specific specific lens. Instead, it feels more like the Marvel writers patting themselves on the back going, "We did it, guys. The real villain is depression. We're doing excellent work here." And that's the fundamental problem with this thematic angle, and why the final act in particular of this film goes off the rails so incredibly fast. The setup and premise are there, but it never feels treated with the seriousness it deserves to garner any sort of emotional connection to the audience. And this is a movie that wants to be taken seriously at any cost. If you don't believe me, look at the marketing where Marvel decided to highlight all the talent that worked on this film that worked for films for the indie label A24. And this trailer practically screamed, "Hey, look at us, we're making elevated cinema over here." And watching this trailer, I had the exact same feeling as I had watching the movie. When you use mental health solely as a gimmick for thematic or emotional gain without adding any sort of depth or insight into this topic, it comes across as disingenuous and surface level at the end of the day. And it is such a weird feeling seeing a film that sets up a character full of so much emotional pain and deep pain that could have explored this topic in an insightful and genre-specific way. But it just doesn't go the extra mile in this regard to warrant a satisfying enough landing at this angle. Outside of this weak thematic angle, the film's action is also not the best that we've seen from Marvel before. The blocking and choreography are oddly paced, and the camera movement is neither kinetic nor interesting. In fact, I'd argue that the action in Thunderbolts is not the movie's strong point. The movie truly soars when it leans heavily into the dysfunctional team angle entirely, which is filled with great comedic moments throughout. The cast all do great work with what they're given, the writing is surprisingly decent for a Marvel movie, and it sets up a lot of interesting stuff for future Marvel endeavors. It's just that the overall package at the end of Thunderbolts is less overall than the small elements that make it up, and as a result, the film stumbles and falls into mediocre territory. The moments that work here truly work in every sense of the word, but it's also quite disheartening to see a film that attempts to do solid work but stumbles into the same formulaic territory that past Marvel films have. Plot overall tries to achieve and set up way too much with way too little, with character elements that feel out of place and an overall inexperienced feel behind the visual style and composition. However, there are slight moments amid the mess that is Thunderbolts where you can catch a glimmer of that past Marvel magic. It's faint, but it's there. And when you see that in small increments throughout this film, you'll at least be able to know that Marvel is attempting a comeback. Just don't bank that comeback entirely on this film in particular. That's why I'm rating Thunderbolts a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this review on my channel. If you're new around here and you like the content you see, don't forget to click that subscribe button down below, like the video, and turn on push notifications. Also, leave comment suggestions down below for future video, essay, and review topics. With that being said, until next time, this is Mitchell signing off. Peace out.